Wikipedia defines NPCs as characters in a game that are not controlled by a player. The behavior is usually scripted and automatic, triggered by certain actions or dialogue with the player characters. So basically, they add to the story without being an integral part of it. But what if we change that this time around? Today we will find out if you can beat Final Fantasy X-2 using only NPCs. First, let's take a look at how this is even going to work. The international version of Final Fantasy X-2, which the HD remaster is also based on, introduced a new mechanic called the Creature Creator. Here you can set pods in order to trap all kinds of creatures that you usually encounter in battle. Once captured, they can be used in both the game's story and also in the newly introduced Fiend Arena. There are tons of other mechanics surrounding the Creature Creator, but those are the most important ones for now, so let's head over to the rules before this intro gets way too long again. First of all, obviously only NPCs are allowed to be used in the run. In this run, we define NPCs as characters that show up in some kind of cutscenes throughout the game and have at least one voice dialogue line. So for example, LeBlanc's goons are allowed since they're involved in a couple of cutscenes, while others like Mr. Goon or Dr. Goon are not allowed. I will go into more detail on this once we go through the run, but this should give you a basic idea about what we're going to work with here. NPCs must stick to a single dress sphere. Once captured, we will assign them a dress sphere that is somewhat fitting of their involvement in the game, and then we have to stick with those for the rest of the run. We also ban duplicate dress spheres, so every NPC has a unique one equipped. The battle settings will be set to ATB mode active and ATB speed fast. Since the game doesn't have any difficulty options, this is basically our way of turning up the difficulty a little. As always, we also ban New Game Plus and start off a fresh file. Not necessarily a rule, but we will also directly control the NPCs. Usually captured creatures act on their own, and the only thing you can influence in the battle is the amount of damage by controlling the stars on the top left corner of the screen. With the help of the Farplane mod, however, we can take over control and give them direct commands. Because of this, we will also not use the star mechanic and stick with the default 3-star option, which I am pretty sure uses the default damage calculating formula anyways. Last but not least, considering the majority of this game's content consists of optional side quests, we will also try to get 100% story progression, so we will do all side missions and also all the optional bosses that add to the percentage counter. As per usual, I'm writing this as I go through the run, so I am just as excited as you are to see how this is going to work out. With all that being said, let's get going. We go through the opening cutscene and mission with our default party still in place. Since we can't capture any creatures until after the intro mission, we just go through it normally. Once we're back on the airship, we now have access to the Creature Creator, so let's see what we are able to grab here. In Chapter 1, there are a total of 10 NPCs available, so that by default should give us quite some characters to work with. Also, yeah, I know, counting the Chocobo is a bit of a stretch, but they are involved in several side missions and also have voice dialogue, even if it's just them making sound. Anyways, the green check mark means they're available from the start, the yellow one means they are available but with some kind of restriction, and I don't really think I need to explain the red X, those can't be captured at all in our setup. Unfortunately, this means the majority of the available NPCs in Chapter 1 are locked out already due to being New Game Plus only. Yibel can only be captured with an SP pod, which lets you choose what type of creature you're looking for. At the moment, we don't have access to those, so while he is theoretically available, we can't get him just quite yet. This pretty much leaves us with Brother, who automatically joins at the beginning, the 2 LeBlanc goons and the Chocobo, and since I'm not going to use Brother at all due to him being ridiculously annoying, we basically already have our party set for the game's start. Male Goon is going to get assigned the Thief dress sphere, since this one probably fits him the best. Female Goon as an enemy likes to use fire against the party, so her dress sphere is going to be Black Mage. Since we don't have access to this one yet, we'll just start out as Thief and switch over to Black Mage once we get there. Chocobos and FF10-2 are usually more passive and like to heal, unless they use Meteor. Because of this, we will assign the White Mage dress sphere once we get access to it. In the meantime, we will equip the Song's dress here, since it's the dress sphere that somewhat comes closest to Mage class. Another thing I want to talk about here are Garment Grids. Garment Grids grant various additional bonuses to creatures, like additional stats or ailment immunities. We get the Vanguard grid from Shinra, which would give everybody an additional plus 10 in both strength and magic, as well as access to armor break, but since I'm not necessarily the smartest, I completely forgot to equip it, so we head into the first mission with the standard First Steps grid. First Steps does give everybody wearing it access to cure, so it's not even that bad, but whatever. It's time for the first mission. The first fight is against LeBlanc, Ormi and Logos, and the strategy is rather simple. The goons have access to Mug due to being thieves, which not only deals good damage, but also lets them steal a couple of early accessories. The Chocobo either uses a normal attack or heals the party. The fact that it has access to Cura from the get-go is pretty nice, although it's not really needed at this point. Also, this pretty much gives me confirmation that the White Mage is probably the best suited dress sphere for it. Anyways, the fight is over rather quickly, and we continue on with the mission until we run into the first boss fight against Boris. This is, by the way, the best boss name for a giant crab I've ever heard. Still one of my favorites to this day. Just like the previous fight, this one is nothing special. We mug with both goons and also attack with our Chocobo, and Boris is down very shortly afterwards. No need to heal here or anything. Also, just so everybody's aware, I will mostly focus on side missions that have actual combat in it. If it is a side mission without any battles, we will skip over it unless it is relevant for something that happens later, so please don't expect this to be a 100% story guide. Anyways, we bring the obtained sphere to Shinra to analyze it and get a Black Mage dress sphere out of it, so we can now change our female goon to her actual dress sphere. This is usually the point where we go visit the Calm Lands in order to get a charm bangle to eliminate random encounters. In this run, however, I decided against that. The reason for that is that certain creatures can learn specific skills in battle. For example, the female goon will automatically learn Fyra and also Fyraga if she's hit by fire spells a specific amount of times. The bonus experience from random encounters is nice, though I doubt it will make that much of a difference overall. Another thing worth mentioning is that since we directly control our creatures, we also have no means to escape a battle. Usually you would lower the stars to 0, which makes all creatures automatically run away, but since we directly control them, this is not an option, so we basically have to battle everything the party encounters. This is something I didn't even think of at first, but it could make for some interesting battles along the way. We head towards Zanakin for our first real mission. The majority of random encounters are manageable, though the Nashorn especially can be very dangerous. Its attack can one-shot both female goon and Chocobo, and even though we eventually made it through, this encounter was way closer than I would have liked, and we already almost game overed here. The battles against LeBlanc's goons, however, are no issue at all, since our goons are way more superior. Usually it's just a couple of attacks and the enemies go down. The boss fight here is against the Sanctuary Keeper, and considering how dangerous some of the random encounters were, I wanted to take this one a little safer. Both goons attack the enemy, while Chocobo is mostly on healing duty. Chocobo's Cura is strong enough to almost provide a full party heal. Luckily, the boss doesn't hit as hard as first expected, so Cura is more than enough to keep up with the healing. The boss itself is rather tanky for this part of the game, but with the strategy in place, it's not really a big deal, and after a while the enemy is down, and we complete the mission. Next up is the mission on the moon floor, where we have to protect the cargo from the approaching thieves. Nothing really much to say here. The thieves don't really have a lot of HP, and most of them go down within 1 or 2 hits. As a reward, we get the Gun Mage dress sphere. At the moment, none of our creatures fit this one really, but that is probably going to change later on, so it's good to have it available just in case. We make a brief detour to Macalania. There are no mandatory fights here as of yet, but I quickly want to mention the random encounter against Sphere Morph that we got here. This one is rather dangerous, and it's also the reason why I'm really glad that we went with a mage in our party setup. As you can see, our goon barely does any damage, so it's up to the female goon to hit the correct weakness and take care of the enemy. Thanks to the equipped accessories, she also has access to Blizzard and Thunder, so we can cover 3 out of 4 elements. Chocobo once again heals, and eventually we make it through this battle as well. This was also the first time I kinda questioned my decision about not using the charm bangle at all, since this could have quickly gone down the drain. Once we finished the dialogue with Trommel, We also get the Unerring Path Garment Grid. While this one only has 2 nodes on it, it gives great benefits to the party, including 22 all stats and a 30% boost to both HP and MP. Since we can only put 2 dress spheres on it, we will go with Thief and Black Mage since they probably benefit more from the stat boost compared to our Chocobro healer. At this point, I kinda wanted to go back on my decision to not use the Charm Bangle, so we return to the Calmlands to find out that there is no Charm Bangle. I am 100% sure that I am at the right merchant, but for some reason the Charm Bangle is no longer there. After looking it up online, it seems that you can only get the Charm Bangle when you're on level 1 or level 5 of the PR minigame, and since we have been doing quite some campaigning already, we have gotten to level 2 in the meantime, so no Charm Bangle for us. At least for now. Good job, Ragnar, I'm proud of you. With that, we continue with the game's main story and head for Besaid next. After getting PTSD flashbacks from my old speedrunning days while opening the door, we approach the next boss fight against the Flame Dragon. Considering we have gotten quite a few levels during our other side missions, the boss literally goes down before he even gets the chance to attack, and we get the White Mage dress sphere as a reward. With that, we finally got all the proper dress spheres on our main party setup before heading into the final mission of Chapter 1 in Kilika. After answering all questions correctly, we get another garment grid and are about to fight the last battle of Chapter 1 against YS-LS0. Similar to the Flame Dragon in Besaid, this one doesn't really pose any threat at all. One of the big advantages of active battle mode is that you can stun lock certain enemies with the right timing, and while it took me a little to get the hang here, once we got the enemy locked, we defeat it before it can get another attack in, and that is it for Chapter 1 already. With the start of Chapter 2, we get 3 SP pods and access to some more new creatures. Before we are able to grab any of those though, we have to continue on with the story. We decide to give the Awesome Sphere to the Youth League, considering it's the only scenario that allows us getting 100% in a single playthrough. I am also pretty sure giving the sphere to the Youth League is required in order to get the upcoming creature, which leads us to the newly available NPCs from Chapter 2. Within our rule set, the only new creature available from Chapter 2 is Elma. Since we now have access to SP pods though, we can also grab Yibel, which would have been available in Chapter 1 already, but inaccessible due to the lack of SP pods. For Elma, I was pretty sure at first that she will be a warrior, but looking at her stats, and also her having access to haste and slow from the beginning, it looks like she might be way better suited as a white mage. Considering we already have a white mage with Chocobro, this is not an option for her. While access to haste and slow are nice, they are way less overpowered compared to FF10 anyways, so we will probably stick with our beloved Chocobo as a healer for now and just leave Elma out. Yibel, as expected, is relatively tanky, so the warrior dress sphere is probably going to fit him the best. While he could be kinda useful, I don't really see a spot for him in my party setup either, considering the only one he could replace would be the male goon, and with the thief class having real short ATB bars, he's probably going to be more versatile than Yibel. Anyways, back onto the story. We do the Chocobo minigame, and then head into the first boss battle of Chapter 2 against the Chocobo Eater. The Chocobo Eater is weak to fire, and our female goon has already learned Firaga in the meantime, so we combo it with a physical attack and make quick work of the boss. In case you haven't noticed yet, creatures are incredibly powerful early on if you know the mechanics behind them and how to optimize the usage. The fact that we're able to directly control them certainly makes things easier as well. Continuing on, we start grabbing the first uniforms to infiltrate LeBlanc's mansion, starting with Mount Gagazet. We interrupt the goon's hot spring session and then are off to battle Ormi. Again, the battle is over relatively quickly though. We just attack with all 3 party members, and it's just a couple of attacks before the battle is won and the first uniform retrieved. Uniform number 2 can be obtained at Jose High Road, where we have to battle both Logos, Ormi, and the female goon.
The nerve!
This battle can be quite annoying, considering Logos and Ormi can put several ailments on the party and buff themselves. In our case, however, they never even get to that point, as we quickly take care of all 3 enemies and receive uniform number 2. The last one can be found in Bicanel, where we once again have to battle Logos, this time accompanied by 2 female goons, but I don't think I need to mention anything at this point. Just like the previous encounters, all enemies are down before they can really do anything to the party, and we received the last uniform as well. Before heading for Guado Salam though, we drop Glasgow off in the Comlands and help him clean out the former monster arena. This side missions gives me more flashbacks from my solo Yuna run I've done years ago, where the insta-kills from the curl gave me a lot of issues. To properly prepare for that, we equipped insta-kill immunity accessories on everybody, though they probably weren't even necessary considering the enemies usually went down before they even had a chance to cast their blaster attack. The boss fight, if you can even call it that, is against 3 blue elementals and is finished off rather quickly as well. As a reward, we get the Alchemist Rare Sphere and can now start catching chocobos for Glasgow. The only problem with that? Captured creatures cannot use the item command, and we can't catch any chocobo unless we give them some greens first. So this basically locks us out of the entire amazing chocobo side mission in chapter 5, and this is something I never really even thought about. Not only does this mean that 100% story progression is probably dead considering you'll be missing quite some percent later on, it also means that we won't get access to the higher power garment grid, which is one of 2 garment grids that lets creatures break the HP limit. The other one is obtainable by encountering all Oversoul enemies in Shinra's Bestiary, and I can't really see myself grinding for that long for a single garment grid. Keep this in the back of your minds, because the lack of break HP limit might become a problem later on eventually. Anyways, we continue on with the main story and are now ready to infiltrate LeBlanc's mansion. To start things off, we play massage parlor in LeBlanc's bedroom, and for our extra services, we are rewarded with the gold hairpin, which halves the MP cost of all spells. Thanks to Brother being a dumbass, we get discovered and have to go through a couple of battles now, with the first one being against Ormi and 2 goons. Similar to previous encounters though, we quickly take care of all 3 of them. The same goes for the next encounter against Ormi and Logos, and even the final encounter against LeBlanc is no big issue at all. As long as you make sure to take out LeBlanc first, there isn't much to worry about. She can apply all kinds of buffs to the other 2, but even with those, I doubt the battle would have been any more difficult. At the moment, we are pretty much breezing through the entire game. After watching the sphere with Vegnagun, we're now off into the final mission of chapter 2 already, where we head into Bavel to investigate further. Since we gave the awesome sphere to the Youth League at the beginning of chapter 2, we have to do a couple of additional battles against some Bavel guards. None of those are worth mentioning though, as we usually take them out before they get a chance to attack or anything. In the Bavel Undergrounds, we also got a couple of battles coming up. The Precept guards are once again quickly taken care of before we fight 2 defender battles. Those have the same stats as the one we fought in Killiga earlier, so again, we take care of them quickly. The first boss fight here is against Spectral Keeper, and unlike its FF10 counterpart, there are no BS teleportation mechanics involved this time, so just like the previous encounters, it is down soon after as well. While we do have our Chocobo set up as White Mage, healing isn't even needed in like 95% of the battles overall. On the way, we also played a tower minigame in order to pick up the Bloodlust and Rig accessories. The ring especially is very important as it greatly reduces spellcasting time, while at the same time also increasing the user's magic by 80. The even more important part though is that equipping it on a creature grants them access to Flare, so from now on we'll be nuking stuff left and right. While it does lower the max HP by 40% and also puts a constant poison effect on the party member wearing it, it is still ridiculously overpowered. Even more so when combined with the Soul of the Tomasa that we picked up earlier, which doubles your magic damage for the cost of double MP usage. And in case this was all a little bit too complicated, well, watch this fight against Barreleye. Here comes the flare, and boom, fight over. By the way, I don't know if anybody noticed it, but we also managed to steal a Charm Banger from Barreleye, so if we want, we can finally stop the random encounters. I might still keep it off for the most part for now though. Coming up next is Bahamut, we charge up, Flare goes brrrr, and the fight is over and we complete chapter 2. We gain 3 more SP pots and continue on with the game. With chapter 3, we also unlock new creatures once again. The only new addition with our rule set here is Buddy. Now I'm not quite sure what his dress here is supposed to be considering we already have a thief. Since Buddy fights with an overdimensionally sized wrench, Gunna doesn't really fit either. Considering the alt bed in general are very handy when it comes to item usage, I thought that the Alchemist might be fitting decently well, so we can go with that. Alchemists also have a special command for mega potions which don't consume your regular item stock, so from now on we will use Buddy as a healer and replace our Chocobro whose services were greatly appreciated up to this point. One thing to keep in mind is that Buddy starts at level 3 while our A team is already around 30, so especially early on, Buddy will be relatively squishy. With that being said, we focus back on the game's story and start off chapter 3 by paying off a Waka Stepped. Chapter 3 is the last point at which you need to do it if you want to get the percentage for it. We win the Sphere Break tournament for the Lady Luck Dress Sphere and are back into combat once we get to Besaid. There is only a single fight here against Valifor, and those who paid attention up until here probably know what's coming up next. Charge up, flare for the win, boom, and we're done here. This will probably be our main choice of dealing damage for the next couple of fights, so don't expect any ultra interesting strategies please. And since we're already on a roll with beating up Aeons, might as well continue, so we head into Killiga next. Before we battle Ifrit though, we have to go through a couple of Vargas first. In those battles, we don't even need to use Flare as normal attacks are more than enough considering we take most of them out before they even have the chance to put haste up. We pick up the Samurai Dress Sphere and head into the Chamber of the Faith where Ifrit is already waiting. Not waiting for long though, because Flare for the win and we're already done here again. We head back into the Bavel underground where we find the leaders of all three factions trying to film the next snuff movie. But before we are successful in playing Dirty Warrior, we get attacked by Marlborough. At this point, you know the drill. Charge up, flare away, and we're done here as well. Up next, we're back on Mount Gagaset where Garrick wants to take out his revenge on the Guado, and of course in order to stop him, we have to defeat him in battle. This was another fight in my solo Yuna playthrough that gave me quite some issues, but here it is no big deal. Flare number 1, flare number 2, and we win. Easy every time. The next mission is one that gives me PTSD flashbacks from my level 1 run I've done a while ago. We head to Mia and Hyro to stop the Raging Machina from doing any further damage. Unlike last time, there are absolutely no issues with the enemies this time around. Once again, we skip Flare and just go for regular attacks, since those are more than enough to take care of the enemies. Similar to this is the upcoming mission in the Macalania Woods. Just like me and Hyro, this one gives me severe flashbacks, but is not a problem at all this time around. Again, we don't even need to use any magic for the enemy gauntlet, as regular attacks do just as fine, and after going through a couple of battles, we complete this mission as well. Before we head into Jose Temple, we go back to the Calmlands and enter the cave in order to rescue everybody. And considering I'm very good at counting and paying attention at the same time, we do the entire mission the second time, because the first time I forgot to rescue the last 2 people. Anyways, once everybody is out, we head into the Chamber of the Faith to battle Yojimbo. And here we actually have to resort to a different kind of strategy. This time we're not going to win by just casting Flare. This time we actually have to cast Flare twice. Can you believe that? Groundbreaking. Absolutely groundbreaking. For the last mission of chapter 3, we head into Jose Temple where we reunite with speedrunners' favorite mechanic in this game, the RNG pillars. One of the 5 grants you access to the Chamber of the Faith, while the other 4 will throw you into an encounter. Luckily, we're not in any hurry in this setting, and the enemies are no big issue either. Once we finally guess the correct pillar, we head into the chamber and now battle Ixion. And you might guess what we do here. Right, Flare for the win. This time a single one is enough again, and we win the battle and complete chapter 3 after reuniting with everybody on the Farplane. We get 3 more SP pods and are off into chapter 4 now. Just like last time, we only get a single new addition to our creatures, as the only one new to the party is Gary Gronzo. As a dress sphere, I guess Berserker probably suits him the best since he fights with his claws and stuff? I don't know. Anyways, I doubt Garrick is going to see any use, but might as well have him available while we're already at it. Chapter 4 for the most part is very unspectacular, as it mainly revolves around the Comsphere mechanics and stuff. Since those aren't really any interesting, we skip forward to the start of the next mission where we chase down Tobley for what feels like an eternity. Once we finally go through with it, we play through the dancing minigame to get the Schmoof shilling. This one is another ribbon type accessory, though it also comes with an additional plus 30 to both defense and magic defense. Unfortunately, there is also auto slow on it, so until we get a speed bracer for auto haste, it's not really any useful just yet. Once we're done, we head into the Thunder Plains to clear the cave in order for the concert to start. The boss Salamander completely nulls all magic, so we go back to basic attacks in order to get it down. This isn't really a big issue though, since the party doesn't take a lot of damage from the boss, and with Buddy throwing out mega potions, we're never in any real danger, and a couple of turns later, we're already done again. After ending the Cold War by singing a song, the party decides to jump into the Farplane in order to save Spiro once again, and this ends chapter 4. Pretty much the most uneventful part of the entire game. With that, we head into the final chapter, and also the one that might have the most amount of content in it. Not only that, but we also unlock our last usable NPCs at this point, and compared to the previous chapters, there are quite a few available here. The Cactuar is kinda similar to the Chocobo in that they do show up in the cutscenes regarding the Cactuar capture quest. Compared to the Chocobos though, they don't really play a prominent part, so I'm not sure whether to allow them or not. Since we probably won't need them for the most part though, we just leave them out for now. This means that Lucille is the only one that is available right from the start of the chapter, while the faction leaders are only available once you complete the Den of Woe. We also got Trema on the list since he technically fits the run's criteria as well, and we can recruit him once we beat the Via Infinito, but once we get past him, there shouldn't really be any further problems in this game anyways, so I doubt he will be needed. Since we can only grab Lucille now, might as well do it before we continue on. Looking at her stats and skills, Lucille seems to be a classic paladin, but since we already put the warrior on the eyeball and we're not allowed to have any duplicate dress spheres, we give her the next best fitting thing, which is the Dark Knight. I doubt she's going to see that much use, so it doesn't really matter all too much anyways. A lot of the missions in chapter 5 are just consisting of cutscenes, so we jump forward to the first bits of action when we head into the Via Infinito for the first time. I wanted to complete the Den of Woe as quickly as possible to unlock the next few NPCs, but we're still missing the last 2 Crimson Spheres in order to get in there, which are both located in the Via Infinito, with the first one being right at the start, and the second one dropping off the first boss on floor 20. Now for the Via Infinito, as some of you may know, the Charm Bangle's no encounter passive does not work here, so you will still get random encounters. And if you remember earlier with us manually controlling our creatures, we have no way to run from a battle, which means we'd have to fight every single battle until floor 100. Now, I'm not even going to pretend that this is something I attempted, because I could already see the last bits of my sanity running away in agony just at the thought of that. Luckily, the remastered PC has sort of a debug function, you can call it. I don't know what it is exactly, but one of the things you can toggle are whether you want to have normal encounter rate, increased encounter rate, or no encounters at all. And this feature luckily also works for the Via Infinito, so we can just ascend down floor by floor without having to fight a million encounters in between every time. Occasionally, we have to battle a Tomberry in order to progress further, which is not a problem since Female Goon easily one-shots it with Flare. Once we reach floor 20, we have to fight the boss Arania, which is a reskin of our favorite boss Boris from earlier. Boris on steroids does deal a little more damage, but nothing all too dangerous, and once again Female Goon wipes the floor with the boss by flaring it into oblivion. After the fight, we pick up the last Crimson Sphere and leave the Via Infinito for now to head into Mushroom Rock Road. Before we are able to access the Den of Woe, we first have to complete the mission here, which is running the U-Fleet Gauntlet. The first battle against the Eyeball and his group is easy, you might already know where this is going. We flare him out of his boots and continue on. The next couple of encounters are mostly normal U-Fleet members without a lot of HP, so we just attack them with regular attacks in order to save some MP. Once we reach the end, we got 2 back-to-back fights, with the first one being against Elma. This version of Elma is much stronger than the one we captured back in chapter 2, but it's still not a big issue. So much that once again, we don't even need to use Flare and still easily get through the battle. Fight number 2 is against Lucille, we just captured earlier, but even she stands no chance against the massive amount of force generated by our spellcasting machine with Flare. One attack is enough, and we are already done with the mission and can now access the Den of Woe, and here I made a minor mistake. I completely forgot that for the first 2 fights you only have access to the first member in your setup, since you're usually doing this part with solo Yuna, so now we only have our goon to go up against them. The first fight against Rico is no issue since she mostly throws grenades, which don't deal a lot of damage. Pain isn't a big issue either, since she pretty much misses all her attacks against Goon. The much bigger problem is that once you get through those fights, the game automatically adds Rico and Pain back into your party instead of the setup that you had before, so we basically have to get through Barreleye, Gipple and Nooch using only our Goon. Both Barreleye and Gipple are luckily not a big issue since both of them mostly use physical attacks, and with Goon having an auto elixir command, we can also heal up if needed. The blind against Gipple is annoying since we're missing with most of our attacks, but the battle itself is still rather safe. The bigger issue is the final fight against Nooch. His regular physical attacks don't deal a lot of damage, but he uses several magic attacks like Greedy Aura and Rippling Chroma. The biggest problem happens at the end of the battle though. When Nooch drops below 3000 HP, he will use Nightfall, which does a fixed 5000 damage and is something we have no chance of surviving, so for the first time in this challenge run, we game over here. Now admittedly, there was also some bad luck involved with Goon getting blinded and therefore missing a lot of attacks against Nooch, but for the second attempt, I went in with a different strategy anyways. We switched the party position of the Goon with the female Goon, and you probably already know where I'm going with this. Rico deals a lot of damage to our Goon, but is gone after a single flare. Luckily, there is a free heal between those fights, so we head into the battle against Pain at full HP and are able to wipe her before she even gets a single attack off. Same strategy applies for the next 3 fights against the faction leaders. Beat them before they have a chance to wipe us. Due to the ring, our Goon's max HP is reduced quite a bit, so we have to be rather careful since she probably can't take more than 1 or 2 attacks, and we're not allowed to do anything with Rico and Pain in our party. Both Barreleye and Gipple take 2 flares to beat. Luckily, Barreleye didn't attack the party at all, and Gipple only managed to get a shot in on Rico. Nooch then proceeds to immediately wipe Pain, and also get some good damage on our Goon in. Luckily, the reduced casting time from the ring gives our Goon so many attacks that she's already able to get Nooch down before he gets the chance to get another attack in, and we complete the dungeon and now unlocked all 3 leaders for capture. And now we got several questions. First of all, which stress spheres are they going to use, and more importantly, are they good enough to replace any of our current party members? During my first look at the 3, there was something I immediately noticed. Barreleye has access to Mighty Guard, and this could be a huge help for some fights going forward. Being able to apply a party-wide shell and protect is incredibly useful and definitely something I want to take advantage of. As for dress spheres, Barreleye would probably be best fit as a monk, but this is something that is not available in this game, so we take the samurai since this kinda fits the best, I guess. Coming up next is the youth league leader Nooch. As far as I know, he's the second fastest creature in the game, only ranking behind Logos, so he might make for a good party member as well. As for dress spheres, his main weapon is a gun, and he can also use powerful magic, so I guess Gun Mage is probably the best fit for him here. Additionally, this gives him access to White Wind as well, so he can also function as a healer if needed. I would have loved to put the Thief on him to take advantage of his high agility stat, but since duplicate dress spheres are not allowed, and our Goon has served us as a great thief up until now, this is probably the best way to go forward. Gipple has a big freaking gun he likes to use, so obviously, Gunner is the best choice for him. Compared to Nooch and Barreleye though, he doesn't seem to be as strong or versatile, so I'm not sure we're going to use him all too much. Last thing to think about now is party composition. We still want to have some kind of magic use in our party, so female Goon is set for now. Buddy doesn't offer much other than healing, which we can do with Nooch, and also Barreleye technically, so he is out, as is our male Goon for now. Going forward, we will go with Nooch, Barreleye and the female Goon. This should get us through most of the upcoming story battles, but there is a good chance we will have to switch up a few things later again. For the next couple of missions, we will also unequip the Charm Bangle and fight a few random encounters on the way. Those aren't really any dangerous, and they give some good experience to get a couple of levels on Nooch and Barreleye, since both of them only started out at level 9. Up next, we head to the Temple of Josei to fight the first version of the experiment. We have to battle this one twice. Once in its basic form as we do now, and another time later after we powered it up all the way from digging up all the necessary parts in Biconel Island. The basic version of the experiment luckily isn't very dangerous. We get a bit unlucky with female Goon getting wiped after the first flare, but with a Mighty Guard up, Barrel and Nuge are already strong enough to take care of the rest of the fight. In the Comlands, we complete the PR minigame as well as the Wingman minigame. The latter one doesn't give any extra percentage to our counter, but completing it rewards us a speed bracer with auto haste. If you remember early on, I talked about the Schmoove Shelling having super ribbon, but also an auto slow on it. The speed bracer is the perfect countermeasure for that, so we can now get both ribbon and auto haste on one party member. This is also the point where we would go to Glasgow and get onto the quest to find the perfect chocobo, but since we can't use items, we never had a chance to catch any of them, so this dungeon, and also the 100% story progression, is therefore locked unfortunately. We continue on in the Thunder Plains, where fiends are running rampage after our concert in chapter 4. Each tower has a chimera, which we can easily dispatch with a single flare. Once all of them are gone, we have the boss fight against Humbaba coming up. The fight itself isn't really that dangerous for the most part. Again, flare takes care of the enemy rather quickly. The only slightly dangerous thing is the meteor that is casted when you beat the enemy. This one hits a total of 12 times for 12.5% of the party members' max HP. Luckily the damage can be halved with Shell, so thanks to Mighty Guard, the party has no problem tanking it. Keep that in mind, since we will run into the same thing with Trema later on. After beating Humbaba, we unlocked a new cave, and yes, it is literally called New Cave in the game. Here we run into Sid and the next boss fight against Machina Panzer, who is accompanied by 3 Watchers. Again, Flare takes care of the boss, while Nuge and Barrel focus on the Watchers in the meantime. The attacks don't deal a lot of damage, and just a couple of turns later, both the boss and the ads are done, and we continue on jumping into one of the holes and starting the first part of the final mission on the Farplane. The first battle coming up here is against Shiva, which I wasn't really afraid of. 2 flares are already enough to put her down before she can start using any of her nastier attacks, and we continue on to the boss fight I was much more afraid of, the Magus Sisters. Those 3 are unique in the sense that they don't really have ATB and can just cast their attacks pretty much instantly, and with 3 enemies on the field, this could give us quite some issues. We start off with Mindy, since she not only has a very nasty HP percentage based attack, but also the lowest total HP of the 3, where we should be able to take her out with a single flare. Unfortunately, Cindy sets up a Mighty God afterwards, but we're still able to take out Sandy rather quickly, and once Cindy is by herself, the fight is pretty much won, and just a few attacks and another flare later, we're done here too, leaving us only with 1 Dark Aeon left. Anima is very similar to Shiva before. A lot of the nastier attacks don't happen until later in the fight, so with female goons spamming flare like there is no tomorrow, the fight is over rather quickly before anything bad can happen. We also got kinda lucky here that Nuge was targeted with Pain and not the goon, since Pain can inflict silence, and that would have actually been a problem. With that, we're done on the Farplane for now, so we return back to the overworld to finish up the last couple of remaining missions. At this point, we start digging to power up the experiment we beat earlier. Since this is rather tedious, we just skip over this part. Just know that I got extremely lucky with my digging and I was able to get all the parts needed with just 50 digs. With all the parts in our pocket, we return to Josei Temple to now fight the fully powered up version of the experiment, and yeah, this one hits way harder than the first version we fought before. The first rocket launcher usually takes out 2 out of 3 party members, and unlike the Dark Aeons earlier, we don't have the amount of firepower needed to take it out before that happens. Luckily, I already had a good strategy for this one in my head. For this one, we need to make a little detour and come back later. After getting the last few cactuars, we open up the path into the Cactuar Hollow. It usually doesn't matter whether you win the Cactuar minigames or not, but on this last one you want to make sure to clutch out a victory, since you get the Covenant of Growth Garment Grid as a reward, which doubles experience, and considering we definitely need to do some grinding later, this quickens up things quite a bit. The boss in here is the Jumbo Cactuar, who is accompanied by 2 regular Cactuars. We also replaced the female goon with the male goon before coming in here, since Jumbo Cactuar nullifies all magic attacks, therefore we can work with our normal flare strategies. Luckily the boss is not really any dangerous or strong, so all 3 party members attacking with physical attacks is more than enough to take care of it and beat the boss. With that, we also unlock the first super boss Angra Mainyu now. Since we're way too low leveled at this point though, we need to do some grinding first. One of the best places to grind is the Farplane. While enemies there usually give good amounts of experience, you actually have to pay attention while grinding. Certain enemies null physical attacks, so you need to work with Flare once again. One advantage here is that there is a save sphere to quickly heal up and save to save if needed. Due to the fights taking quite a while though, eventually we went to a different place to grind. We returned back to the Thunder Plains and entered the new cave again. The Machinas in there are all relatively easy to take care of, and they give decent experience. Since all of the enemies can be hit with physical attacks, you can just mash X without having to pay too much attention. We also bring back the male goon for the female one during this. With the Bloodlust accessory, he hits pretty hard and is also auto-berserked, so you don't even need to mash any buttons for his attacks. We do this until we hit level 65 on Nuge and Barreleye, with Goon being level 77 already. At this point we should be able to beat the final version of the experiment, so we return to Jose Temple to give this another shot. Unlike the last time, the party is able to tank the rocket launcher, and even though Nuge gets wiped on the second attack, we were able to deal enough damage and take it down this time around. My backup plan in case we got stuck was to come back in here with the catnip if needed, but luckily we were able to get through this fight the normal way and are able to continue on. With that, the only two things left are Angra Mainyu and Bicanel and the remaining parts of the Via Infinito in Bavel, so we're slowly approaching the end of this challenge. We return to Bavel, but not for the Via Infinito, as we return to the underground parts of Bavel first. I could have gotten a ribbon here in chapter 2 already, but since my speedrunning muscle memory from way back only reminded me about the ring and the Bloodlust accessories, I completely forgot about that, so might as well grab it now since it is still pretty useful. At this point we should be able to tackle Angra Mainyu, so I gave this one a shot, but was quickly reminded by the game that if we want to beat a super boss, we need to come up with a decent strategy. Perdition's flame hits like a truck, and the boss usually uses it before we're able to get the Mighty Guard up. Goon especially has really low magic defense because of the Thief Dress Sphere, so more likely than not, he will go down because of it. With Mighty Guard, the party might be able to tank the hit, and with White Wind from Nuge, we got a good way for constant healing as well. After trying to brute force this battle unsuccessfully a couple of more times, I tried switching up strategy. We put the Tetra Bracelet on Nuge, which not only makes him absorb all elemental magic attacks, it also gives him some extra defense and magic defense to make sure he stays alive for constant healing. The following attempt we actually managed to get Mighty Guard up in time, and just as expected, the party can tank the hit now. Unfortunately, the joy only lasted for a few more turns, because shortly afterwards, Angra Mainyu decides to flare Goon out of his boots. Don't you hate it when your own strategy is used against you? While this was rather annoying, luckily there is an easy solution for that. We can use Star Curtains to teach our creatures Reflect, which, unsurprisingly, reflects all magic damage right back at the boss. Since White Wind is considered blue magic, it also doesn't take Reflect into account, so we can still heal up our party without any bigger issues. We head into the boss battle one more time, this time immediately putting up both Mighty Guard and Reflect and then go back to work again. Something I haven't mentioned yet is that we're completely ignoring the ads and focus on the boss solely. The arms don't really do a lot of damage and are mostly annoying. Even if we'd beat them, Angra Mainyu would just revive them with full life. There is a cheesing strategy where you drain all of the boss's MP and then beat both arms, which gets him stuck using Osmose over and over again for an easy and free win, but I figured with our setup, doing this fight normally might be the less annoying way since we don't really have an easy way to drain big chunks of MP quickly. Anyways, once we got everything set up, our strategy consists of Goon and Barreleye attacking the boss, while Nuge constantly spams White Wind. Occasionally the boss will dispel one of our party members, but if that happens, we just put another Reflect up and continue on. When party members are starting to run out of MP, we can use one of the Goon's free elixirs to quickly fill everything back up and then continue to do damage on the boss. The occasional reflected flare also does some good numbers, and we continue on with the strategy until the boss eventually is down after a good 15 minutes of pummeling it. Back on the airship, we now get the mascot dress sphere for completing all missions. It is very unfortunate that nobody really fits the mascot since it has incredible stats and also comes with auto rhythm equipped on creatures, but I hope we will be fine even without it. With that, the only thing left to do is finish off the Via Infinito. We only made it to floor 20 earlier in order to grab the last Crimson Spheres, so we still have quite some ways to go here. Just like before, we once again put on no encounters since I really don't have the patience to deal with all those battles with 80 floors still left to go. We start off with the first boss of this segment on floor 40, the Black Elemental, and I'm not sure what to expect here. It mostly uses either Ultima or Berserk on turn 1. It can also use Flare, but I have never seen that on turn 1 before. I'm also pretty sure Ultima is an instant wipe, so we want Berserk here, and would you look at that, that is pretty much the perfect start. Ideally we manage to take the boss out before it gets another turn in, since I am pretty sure we can't survive all too long in this battle, and there you go, the boss is already down. This was pretty much the perfect pattern, so I really can't complain about this at all. As a reward, we get a chest containing several accessories, including another speed bracer and the briefly mentioned catnip. The catnip makes every attack deal 9,999 damage once you get into critical HP, but unfortunately it was nerfed in the HD remaster to automatically put slow and berserk on the character wearing it. We can counteract the slow with the speed bracer, so it will probably steal some usage. Once we get to floor 60, we run into the next boss, Conjurer, and this one hits extremely hard. Not only does it have auto protect, as you can see there is no way we can withstand its attack with our current setup, but luckily Conjurer usually only uses single target attacks, so there is an easy way to take care of it. We use 3 Phoenix Downs to teach both Nuge and Barrel alive, and then equip Goon with the catnip and the speed bracer. The plan here is to let Goon run rampage on the boss, dealing big damage, with Nuge and Gipple making sure to revive any party member going down. Conjurer isn't necessarily the fastest enemy, so they should be able to keep up with reviving. And this worked out perfectly. As you can see, Goon is doing huge damage very quickly, and in case somebody goes down, we can just revive them. Unfortunately, Conjurer can also use Skunk, which drains all the MP of the party member inflicted with it, but luckily the enemy barely attacks anymore after draining everybody, and we're able to take it out shortly afterwards. For the next boss, Shaq, on floor 80, I had a very specific strategy in mind. We put the Howling Wind Garment Grid on everybody for an extra 20 agility. As some of you may know, if you attack Shaq fast enough, you can stun lock it, which results in the enemy not being able to get a single attack in. This is where our rule with fast battle speed and active ATB puts us at a big advantage for once. Goon with the Thief Dress Sphere is really fast, and both Nuge and Barrel Eye support him whenever the ATB is full. Shaq has a couple of very nasty attacks, but thanks to the stun lock, we won't ever see any of those, and after a while the next boss is down, and we're heading towards the final floor, and this was the fight I was most afraid of, and that wasn't without reason. The last floor has 2 back-to-back battles against Paragon first and Trema right after, and to be honest, this might be the first time I'm going to fight Paragon legitimately. Some of you may know that you can quickly end this battle by bribing the enemy, but unfortunately this is not an option this time around. The damage we do to Paragon is actually not that bad, but similarly to Angra Mainyu earlier, we are having a lot of issues putting up a Mighty Guard. If he decides to throw out physical attacks first, the first party member goes down before we can put up any kind of buffs. I tried this battle a couple of more times, but to no avail. To be fair, Nuge and Barrel Eye are only level 67, with Goon being level 80, so it's probably a good idea to grind out a couple of levels in the new cave again before giving this battle another shot, so let's skip forward to the end of the grind. We got up all the way to level 83 before heading back into the Via Infinito to give it another try. Unfortunately, not much has changed. Paragon still annihilates the party with physical attacks, but even if we could tank those, it wouldn't help much since its Genesis attack hits for over 13,000 damage on our Goon. The Thief has way too little magic defense, so I can't see any way for him to be able to tank that. Because of this, we are resorting to the one thing I wanted to avoid if possible, and that is grinding the Fiend Arena. Depending on the cup, you can get multiple copies of several very useful accessories, which you can feed to your creatures to either up their stats or have them learn new skills. And for everybody asking whether or not this run will also go through the super bosses in here, the answer to that is no. In order to unlock the Fiend World Cup or the Farplane Cup, We would need to capture several non-NPC creatures and go through the tails in order to unlock certain things, which technically is not allowed. And to be honest, I simply just don't want to go through all the trouble to unlock things and fight those bosses. The strategy would just be to max out all your stats and then go through the enemy, and since the goal of this challenge is to just 100% the story anyways, it's not really needed. If you want to see this challenge go through the Fiend Arena super bosses, let me know in the comments. If enough people want to see this, I might make a separate video for it in the future, but for now we focus on the game's main story. The two cups we're mostly looking at here are the Chocobo Cup and the U-Fleet Cup. The Chocobo Cup requires you to have a Chocobo in your party, which we luckily have from all the way back in Chapter 1. The majority of the prizes are not that special, but there is one very specific accessory we're looking for here, which is the Minerva's Plate. Using the Minerva's Plate on a creature raises the max magic defense by 40, which is exactly what we need in order to tank Paragon's hits. Since the enemies in the Chocobo Cup are also not that strong, we usually don't have any issues and can easily beat the cup. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the U-Fleet Cup. We use the same setup here we used in the Via Infinito before. Get Goon into critical HP and then have him wreck the enemies with the catnip, while Nooch and Barrelite try to keep the party alive by either healing or reviving. This usually works well if we only fight a single enemy, but in groups of 2 or 3, the incoming damage is oftentimes overwhelming and we lose more often than not. Generally, we manage to win the cup once every 4th attempt or so, so this takes quite some time to do. Luckily, the rewards are very much worth it. The ones we're specifically looking for here is the Defense Bracer, which grants Auto Protect and Auto Shell. Other accessories available here include the Speed Bracer and also the Smooth Shelling. At first my plan was getting 3 Defense Bracers and then go back to the Paragon fight, but as you can see, this is still not working, and the reason for that is that our max HP are way too low. While we do take way less damage compared to before, it's still too much to be able to tank the attack. And with the ribbon blocking the second accessory slot, we don't really have a good way to get our max HP up either. Because of this, we went back into the Fiend Arena in order to collect 9 defense braces so our party can learn Auto Wall as a passive skill. We have no means to learn Ribbon as a passive with all our party members, so one accessory slot is usually occupied with a ribbon. Thanks to the Auto Wall passive, we can now equip a Crystal Bangle to double their max HP at the second slot. Since we also got quite some speed braces during the cup grind, we can also put Auto Haste onto everybody, which is definitely quite useful as well. With all those pieces in place, we return to the Via Infinito and battle Paragon once again. This time the party takes way less damage, and since we already have Auto Wall on everybody, we don't even need to put up a Mighty Guard anymore. Nooch once again is on healing duty with White Wind, while the other 2 are attacking the enemy, and that is pretty much all there is to that battle. With Paragon defeated, there is only one more battle left to do in here, which is against Trema. I was pretty sure that our party should be tanky enough for this battle, but I was a little surprised to see them doing this little damage. Once again, Nooch's main job is to keep the party alive with White Wind, while the other 2 party members go for the attack. Unfortunately, they are only doing a few hundred damage to Trema, and with him having a million HP, I was looking at a potential 10+ hours fight. Luckily, I kinda expected something like this to happen and already equipped the Catnip on Goon again before coming in here. So the plan for this now is to have Goon being critically HP and do max damage to Trema, while the others either heal or revive Goon if he goes down. While Goon misses a lot of attacks due to Trema's high evasion, he hits for big damage once he actually connects. Trema himself mostly uses physical attacks, with an occasional Demio Flare in between, which don't really deal a whole lot of damage. He also uses attacks that drain MP, but if Nooch is getting low, we can just throw in Elixir with Goon and continue on like before. The fight has a total of 3 scripted attacks, which all happen when you pass a 25% HP threshold mark. The first 2 times, Trema uses Meteor. Like in the Humbaba battle earlier, this one hits for 12.5% of a character's max HP, but is half due to the auto shells, so it's not really a big problem. Once you get him to his last quarter, he will also use Ultima once, but again, with auto shell up, we are safe and continue on. After that, it's just some more pummeling, and after a roughly 30-minute battle, Trema goes down and we beat the last story related super boss fight. Like mentioned earlier, we're not going to do the Fiend Arena super bosses for now, so if you wanna see those, let me know in the comments. With that, we are now in the endgame of this round, though I doubt we are going to run into any big issues at this point. Trema is way harder than anything that is still in our way, so once we went through the last story related cutscenes, we're back in the Farplane. There is also the piano puzzle minigame in here, but we completely skip over that since Asitahaka at this point should be really easy, and I don't really feel like doing the entire minigame thingy. The enemy barely does any damage to the party, so we just attack with everybody until it is down and out. With that, the only thing left is Vegnagan and Shuyin. Vegnagan's tail is quickly taken care of, as is the leg, the body, and also the face. Not really any big issues here, we just attack with the entire party and quickly take out each part. And pretty much the same can be said for Shuyin as well. He does very little damage, and it's only a couple of attacks before he is out as well, and we finish the challenge off for good. Now, I know that this was not necessarily one of the harder challenges I have done, but this is something I had in the back of my mind for a long time now, so I wanted to give this one a shot, and I hope you all enjoyed it just as much. Also shoutouts to this video's channel supporters, especially Nervarel and Mr. Cat. Becoming a YouTube or Patreon member not only supports the channel, but also gives you 48-hour early access to all future videos. Also, in case anybody's still interested, in the end, we only got 99% story progression, so us not being able to catch chocobos was just too much in the end. With that being said, that is it for me this time. Thank you all for watching, and I hope I see you all next time again. Until then, take care.